There you go. I had just cleaned and bandaged up a cook's hand, who had apparently been so clumsy that he managed to cut his finger and then burnt even burnt the palm of his hand on the way to the medjack hut. I sighed and rolled back my shoulders slightly when he walked out of the door. Clint had his day off, which meant Jeff and I had to do all the work on our own. And usually that wasn't even bad since we often didn't have much to do. But today a lot of guys seem to be stressed and unconcentrated. It was the middle of the afternoon. The sun was still shining brightly outside, and for the 5th time today, I wish I had the day off instead of Clint's, but I hadn't. Instead, I was stuck inside with Jeff, who was just as annoying. Normally, we always had fun together. The boys were quite talkative and often we had good conversations about everything and anything. But today was just not a good day for me, and Jeff didn't seem to look forward to any kind of conversation either. I stuffed the rest of the bandages I was holding back into a makeshift cupboard and put the scissors I had used next to it. Then I sat down on one of the beds, which were all empty, luckily. I hated when someone was hurt so badly they had to stay in here. Jeff was rummaging around the room, probably searching for something or putting something back where it belonged. I didn't know. I looked outside, debating whether to get fresh air for a second or maybe a glass of water from the kitchen. I love my job, obviously. Absolutely, but today something was off. I just wanted to get out of this building. In a quick moment, I stood up, balancing my weight on my feet for a moment, and then looked up at Jeff, who was clearing out a drawer right now. I'm going to get a drink. He only nodded as I walked out and took a deep breath. I didn't realize how stuffy the room was until I finally got a bit of fresh air outside. Enjoying the breeze on my skin, I slowly made my way towards the kitchen. When I passed the garden, I stopped and took a moment to look for New. We had grown very close. Not only was he my best friend, but also my boyfriend's best friend. And I told him everything and trusted him with my whole heart. I waved when I finally spotted him and carefully stepped over a row of freshly planted carrots to get to him. Hey, Noob, I claimed. Oh my God, what are with these big words? I claimed enthusiastically. I can't even say it. I hope y'all understand what I should have meant, but okay. Not only because I was that happy to see him, I had just been talking to him about 2 hours ago during lunch, but mostly because I was happy to even talk to anyone. Hey there. Oh, wait, hold up. Hey there. He answered and glanced up from his work. What are you doing? I asked. I allowed myself to flop onto the dry grass next to him and watch how he cut a small branch of whatever plant we were looking at here. Gardening, he simply said, focusing on the plant. I rolled my eyes. I could see that, you shank, I answered jokingly. For a brief moment, I closed my eyes, tilted my head back, and let the sun shine on my face, before getting up again and stretching my arms. I couldn't take no more than a few minutes away from work. Enough break. I try to motivate myself to get my water and then back to Jeff. See ya. New only waved as I headed off towards the kitchen where I could already smell dinner. I went in, asked for a glass of water, and walked out. Not without trying to catch a glimpse of the food, but Fry Pan shooed me away before I could even see anything. I smiled as I stepped out. I smiled as I stepped out, noticing how the sun was pretty low already. Oh, that's a typo right there. It's okay though. Minho should be back in a bit. That was one of the few annoying parts of a relationship. Him being away all day and me having to worry about whether he would come back, although he always did. But that didn't mean I would ever stop worrying. I don't know. I pushed the thought of Minho being stuck in the maze to the back of my head and continued walking towards the medjack hut. I'm back, I simply stated as I entered and put my glass on the only small table we had. I'm back. I simply started. I'm going. Oh my god. What is up with me? I'm back, I simply stated as I entered and put my glass on the only table we asked the builders to carpenter for us. Jeff, again, only nodded. He had apparently just finished cleaning. Sorry, it's like 2 a.m. Okay. He had apparently just finished clearing out the drawer and was now picking out stuff we couldn't use anymore. Wine, Jeff. I knew that voice. In a heartbeat, I turned around. My face fell. A painted Minho was standing in the doorway, clutching his arms. Babe, oh, Chuck, are you okay? Is everything okay? Are you okay? Where is everyone else? Why are you here already? Did something happen? Oh my god. I basically threw the bandage I had just picked up, not caring about anything except my boyfriend at the moment. Running up to him, I looked him up and down, but I couldn't see any blood or any wounds. I couldn't see any blood. I couldn't see any blood or any wounds, ripped clothes or anything that could have led to him being here early. I'm fine, he breathed, and I relaxed a bit, still worried and probably close to a heart attack anyway. But this little guy isn't. Minho grabbed whatever he was clutching with another hand, and onto sight coming a shaking tiny puppy? Puppy? What's a puppy doing in the glade? I clasped my hands over my mouth in shock and took a second to calm down and breathe before I had stored my thoughts. I reached out for the small dog, and Minho carefully handed it to me. Slowly and extremely gently, I turned the shivering puppy around and smiled. Then cautiously put it on the table next to my glass glass of water and listened to Minho's explanation. We found him somewhere in the maze, he started, but I immediately interrupted him. Her, I simply said, and when he looked at me confused, I chuckled. She's female. I turned my attention back to the little girl, still shivering, and pointed towards a bowl. We had once stolen from the kitchen on one of the cupboards. Jeff immediately got the hint and grabbed it, then filled my abandoned water into it. So we found her somewhere in the maze while running. It was about noon, I think. She was just lying in the corner. Good thing she yelped, so she caught her attention. I instantly picked her up and told Jackson to keep running while I brought her back to you. I smiled at his statement. He immediately thought of me. Or maybe just met Jax, but whatever. Either way, I found it cute. I checked the puppy's heartbeat just to be sure, but luckily it was normal. She didn't seem to be hurt, just scared and cold. And she couldn't move that well yet. I would say she was about 3 weeks old, maybe a month. Slowly, I put the bowl next to her head. I put the bowl next to her head and moved her a bit so she could reach it. She's not drinking, Minho stated after a few moments. I rolled my eyes. I realized, you shank. She probably needs a special bowl or something. Problem is, we don't have that here. I racked my brain, but I simply couldn't think of anything around here that would come close to a drinking bottle for her. I looked at Jeff. You go get Albie, will you? We need him here anyways to debate what to do with her, I said and turned to face Minho. Can you get a blanket or something? She's cold and we need to warm her up immediately. Once Jeff had left and Minho darted across the room to find a blanket, I pulled the small puppy up and carefully wrapped her around my arms. And carefully wrapped my arms around her. When I felt the shaking body relax slightly, that's when I knew I had to keep her, no matter what Albie said. I started to reassuringly stroke her back, move her head down a bit, and whispered in her ear, "Hey, princess, you're safe. Don't worry. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you, you know." I felt Minho hug me tightly from the back. His arms wrapped around my waist. His head rested on my shoulder, and I grinned like a little girl. Minho and I have been dating for months now, but he still made me feel all dizzy and lovey-dovey, like we had just confessed our feelings. This is why I love you so much, princess," he whispered in my ear. I knew I needed to bring her back to you the second I saw her. I blushed and turned my head so I could look at him. You know, you just called her princess, didn't you? He asked, smirking, and I grinned even wider. I had actually used the nickname he gave me for the little puppy. Did I? I questioned and raised an eyebrow. Now completely turning around so the puppy was between the two of us. Why? He sounded amused, happy even, and let go of my waist only to put his hands back a second later. You know, I think I'm gonna call her that, I said, and looked down at her. She was a little princess, no doubt. Princess? I whispered. Buttercup. Minho raised an eyebrow, and I laughed at his expression. Princess Buttercup? He asked. I nodded in agreement. He smiled and raised a hand to stroke her soft fur. I like that. Princess Buttercup.